Good afternoon, everybody. This is Carmen Wabagijik-Nuchtai. I am the Director of Health and Community Wellness for Tikmikshing and Anishinaabeg. Welcome to our Health Q&A for Thursday, July 16th. I do have a panel today, and our panel consists of Amanda Wabagijik-Jourdain. She's our Health Promotions Manager. Lisa Grew, who is our home care manager, and James Boland, who is works with Mama West Wing as the mental health and addictions counselor. So today in our health Q&A, we will be speaking about the Ontario government's stage 3 and what will be opening in Sudbury. So stage 3, the Sudbury Public Health Sudbury and districts was accepted to move into this next stage. So we'll discuss some of those easing of restrictions, and then we will go to James, who will be speaking about anxiety and fear simplified. So I will begin, and I just want to let you know that there has been no positive cases since June 22nd in the Sudbury and Manitoulin area, which is really good, and that's why Sudbury is able to move into stage 3. The government is continuing its gradual staged approach to reopening Ontario, restarting the economy and easing the necessary restrictions that were put in place to contain the spread of COVID-19 outbreak. Nearly all businesses and public spaces will be able to gradually open in stage 3 with public health and workplace safety restrictions in place, while some high-risk venues and activities will remain closed until they can safely resume operations. Physical distancing remains a requirement for all people who are not from the same household or social circle. In keeping with the gradual approach to reopening the province, Ontario will continue to monitor key public health indicators, and some stage 3 restrictions will be further eased over time as it is safe to do so.
In stage 3, more restrictions will be loosened and nearly all businesses and public spaces will reopen as long as they follow the public health advice and workplace safety guidance necessary to keep everyone safe. The Chief Medical Officer of Health, public health experts, and other officials have advised the following high-risk places and activities are not yet safe to open due to the likelihood of large crowds gathering, congregating, difficulties with social distancing, challenges with maintaining the proper cleaning and sanitation required to prevent the spread of COVID-19. So these places will not be able to open yet, and they are amusement parks and water parks, buffet style food services, dancing at restaurants and bars other than performers hired by the establishment following specific requirements. Overnight stays at camps for children, private karaoke rooms, prolonged or deliberate contact while playing sports, saunas, steam rooms, bathhouses, and oxygen bars, table games at casinos and gaming establishments. All other businesses and public spaces will be permitted to be open, subject to ensuring the appropriate health and safety measures are in place, as well as limits on gathering sizes. More information on restrictions and gathering limits in stage 3 is available below.
Okay, so on Friday, July 17th, the public health unit regions will enter stage 3. So all locations can be found on the website. Sudbury is included in to enter stage 3. There are still regions that will remain in stage 2, and please review that list on the Ontario guidance document.
A cell phone video has emerged.
Okay, you know what? I just lost my, okay, there we are. Sorry about that. Okay, so gatherings. Indoor gathering limits will increase to a maximum of 50 people. Outdoor gatherings will outdoor gathering limits will increase to a maximum of 100 people. In all cases, individuals are required to continue to maintain physical distancing of at least 2 meters, so that's 6 feet, with people from outside their household or social circles. All businesses, services, and public spaces when hosting an event are subject to indoor or outdoor gathering limits and ensuring physical distancing can be maintained. People at their place of work, including performers and crews, do not count towards gathering limits. And people gathering indoors for religious services, rites, or ceremonies and wedding ceremonies or funeral services can continue to fill up to 30% of the capacity of the particular room as introduced in stage 2. Oh, okay, sorry. It's my name again. Facilities for sports and recreational fitness activities. Examples of facilities for sports and recreational fitness activities include gyms, fitness studios, and community centers. They will be subject to social distancing and limits.
Fitting rooms. Fitting rooms at retail settings were permitted to reopen with restrictions in stage 1 and stage 2. So all fitting rooms may reopen as long as patrons that are not permitted to occupy adjacent fitting room stalls at any one time.
Okay, so libraries. Libraries were permitted to resume limited on-site services in stage 2. In addition to the services resumed in stage 2, libraries may reopen for all on-site services as long as materials are circulated, returned, and accessed within the library are disinfected and quarantined before being recirculated. Personal care services. Personal care services, including but not limited to hair salons, spas, tanning salons, tattoo studios, diet centers, and beauty salons, were permitted to open in stage 2. In addition to the services permitted in stage 2, all services that tend to a customer's face are permitted. Facials, ear piercing, eyebrow grooming, and eyelash extensions. Patrons must wear face coverings except while receiving services on an area of their face that would otherwise be covered by a face covering. Workers must wear appropriate personal protective equipment, PPE. Personal care services must take measures to enable physical distancing between patrons, such as limiting the number of people who may be in the business at any one time. Businesses may take your name and contact information to support effective contact tracing in cases of an outbreak.
Playgrounds and play structures. Outdoor playgrounds and play structures are permitted to reopen in stage 3. Physical distancing of at least 2 meters, which is 6 feet, must be in place at all indoor playgrounds and play structures, except between individuals from the same household or social circle.
Okay, team sports and live sporting events. Prolonged contact while playing sports is not permitted. Amateur and recreational sports leagues. Oh, am I on mute?
No.
Okay, thank you. It's just I seen Lisa up on the screen, so I thought I was on mute and just talking. Sorry about that. I'll begin again. Amateur and recreational sports leagues may resume so long as they do not allow prolonged or deliberate physical contact between players, or if they have modifications to avoid physical contact between players. Leagues must contain no more than 50 participants in total. So that's some of the information that it can be found with regards to stage 3. We also have, for Tikmikshing, our reopening plan. And the reopening plan will take into account the easing of restrictions within the Sudbury and Manitoulin area. And because of the low positive cases within Tikmikshing and in Sudbury, we will be approaching Chief and Council and presenting some easing of restrictions, further restrictions. So on the next few weeks, we will showcase, or we will have on the Health Q&A some updates as to what restrictions will be easing in Atikameksheng. So now I will go to James Boland, and James will be talking about anxiety and fear simplified. Take it away, James.
Ani, Wallaman Gandishnikas, Sudbury and Dojaba, Ajijak and Dodam. So my spirit name is Grey Wolf. I'm from Sudbury, Ontario. I'm from the Crane clan. Chimigwich for the honor of being able to present today and to come back. It's nice to be back. So I threw something together here about anxiety and fear, looking at it in a simplified context. And right off the hop, I got this big, huge word that is probably, not so simplified. There are states of physio-emotional hyperarousal. That's the huge word. And this is often called stress response or fight or flight response, all really the same thing. These states of emotional and physical hyper responses of arousal occur as a result of the challenges and opportunities that life gives us. We use different words that help us to describe these things, that help us to understand what we're feeling, and help us in terms of how we're going to act. Fear is this state of emotional hyperarousal, which by definition occurs in response to a threat, a clear and a present danger. For example, a car is screaming towards you from out of nowhere. Fear is activated. This COVID-19 pandemic here is a clear and present threat to our lives, to our health, to our communities, to our loved ones, to our economic health, and to our physical health. It's a huge threat to our frontline healthcare workers too, and it's called fear. That is normal, and it's to be expected in the face of a threat. The fear response can go into a number of different ways. It can go to terror, where we can become overwhelmed and just run away from it. It can go into denial, like this will never happen, where people might say, it'll never happen to me, it's not that bad. And I can still go randomly about mingling with people anywhere that I choose. And we've seen a lot of examples of that on television. I think one of the reasons that we're doing so well is that we're respecting the social distancing in Canada. And you can see that by the numbers. Fear can move us to action, where the emotional response to fear is action. The emotional response to fear that moves us to action is called courage. Every one of us has courage. We get courage both from within ourselves that we can call upon, and we also get courage from our friends and from our loved ones. Fear binds us together as a community, and it binds us together in very specific action, which is designed to mitigate or eliminate the threat. Excuse me. Our actions in response to fear are community collaboration and outward focused, in which we unite our strengths together to eliminate the threat. Words such as duty, responsibility, and service to our community members and loved ones rings loud, and it propels the movement of individuals to unite in an action response of courage to the fear. Just as we have seen here in the Atikameksheng Anishinaabe First Nation, we have come together with sound leadership and successful action from community to help quell and mitigate the fears associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. Anxiety is a term that we use to describe a state of hyperarousal in the absence of a real threat or a magnifying of something that is non-noxious stimuli, something that's not really a threat that we turn into a threat. Exam anxiety, for example. An exam is not a threat to our lives, like an examination for a test. It's an opportunity and a challenge, yet we use the word anxiety to describe our feelings around it. Anxiety is a word that is often and very overused, and there are actually more appropriate words that can describe and clarify our feelings, such as worried, perplexed, concerned, disgruntled, frustrated, nervous, and these words can help lead us to action. The common behavioral response to anxiety is avoidance. We try to avoid these things that make us feel negative or uncomfortable. We also focus our attention on decreasing that state of hyperarousal, and that's in an attempt to self-soothe when we are feeling this form of anxiety. Key things about avoidance and self-soothing is that we move our actions inward as opposed to outward. When we label our emotional response to a threat as fear, it calls us to duty to serve to an action, to use courage, and to eliminate the threat. If we label our emotion in response to a threat as anxiety, it moves us to self-soothing and avoidance. It moves us to internalizing instead of acting together as a community to address the threat. It's important that when we talk about fear and about anxiety, to know the difference, because the actions that arise from an individual will be different, depending on the emotion that is labeled or that they're feeling. As a counselor providing service, it's imperative that we recognize the emotions and the actions that arise with an individual, because this will help to navigate the form of treatment most applicable and beneficial to the individual. There is a responsibility upon us as clinicians to use the right language when working with people to ensure that fear and anxiety are being differentiated and treated accordingly. We need to start using the correct and appropriate language and help educate. When I feel afraid because a car is barreling towards me, I know that I'm afraid. I'm not anxious. When I'm anxious because I'm going for a job interview, for example, I know I'm anxious, but I'm not afraid. There's quite a difference. What's very important here is to recognize the action arising from an individual. For example, if I'm afraid of something, I reach out to others for support, or I call on that courage that I have. When I'm anxious about something, I either avoid or I go internal to self-soothe with that self-talk or that meditation. These are some of the ways that we're able to deal with that. And what I wanted to do was just to give a simple example, an explanation as to anxiety and fear. It's a lot more complex than that when you get into the DSM-5 and you look at different forms of anxiety and fear. So this is just keeping it very simplified. And I hope it helps out to help anybody to understand maybe something that you're feeling along the way. And again, to reach out, connect, and be with the people you love, and share the moments that are important to make sure that your well-being is kept intact. I said, miigwech meanwhile.
Miigwech, James. That was very nice. When you talk about emotions or feelings, it brings me back to just a few weeks ago. I went to go visit my granddaughter, and on her playroom there's it's a paper or plastic, and it has all these different faces with different expressions. So she's learning about how to express her feelings, and she's only 2 years old. So, and when we talk about it, when I talk with her, you know, she can give me that expression and then she can act it out too. So, which is really good. So it's really important for us to let our emotions out. And, you know, we may, you know, think of it as negative, but it's not. It's a good thing to let our emotions out. It's not to let them prolong for so long or hold them in for so long. That's, you know, the negative part of it. So we all have emotions and we all have to let it go and enjoy those and learn from that as well. So miigwech, James, that's really good. So miigwech for watching this week's Health Q&A. We hope you watch for next week's Health Q&A and look forward to that session. And again, with everything, if you have any questions, you can always call Marina McCumber, our community health nurse, if you have anything relating to COVID. Oh, I did want to mention too, we did have a testing day today. So we had scheduled that with community paramedicines in Sudbury. They came down to the community center and did testing for community members. And we had, I believe, about 35 people tested. So, which isn't as much as what I thought would be, but it's still okay. And it's surveillance testing, so nobody was positive or nobody was sick going there. So we will get those tests in a couple of days. I did go, so I'll get my test in a couple of days. And what they said was, if we don't call you, then that's good news. If we call you, then that means you're positive, and then I'd have to stay in for 14 days. But it's better to know, and it's surveillance testing, so it's good for some stats as well. And so thank you again for coming to this week's Health Q&A, and we'll see you next week. Pamapi.
On the